I am Eleanor Thompson, 67 years old, and I never thought I would be uninvited to my own daughter's wedding, especially not after contributing $30,000 toward her Paris celebration. The email from Stephanie arrived on a Tuesday evening. If you want to be a part of it, you can watch through the Google Earth window, LOL. My hands trembled, but I simply replied, sure. Enjoy your big day. What happened next shocked us both. By 7 the next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing with her name flashing on the screen. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe to hear more stories about turning heartbreak into triumph. My journey as Stephanie's mother began as a love story, though not the kind you might expect. Her father Frank and I were college sweethearts who married young and built what I thought was the perfect life. Frank was a kind, hard-working man who adored Stephanie from the moment she was born. We were the typical American family with a modest home in a safe neighborhood, backyard barbecues on weekends, and dreams of college funds and dance recitals. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Frank had suffered a massive heart attack at work. He was only 42. Just like that, Stephanie lost her father at 12 years old, and I became a widow with a mortgage, grief, and a young daughter to raise alone. Those early years were the hardest. I worked as an administrative assistant during the day and waitress 4 nights a week just to keep our home. Every morning, I would wake up at 5 to pack Stephanie's lunch before my first shift. Those little notes I tucked into her lunchbox became our special tradition. Mom's daily wisdom, she called them. She kept every single one in a shoebox under her bed until she left for college. You never complain, she told me once during her high school graduation. How do you stay so strong? The truth was I wasn't always strong. There were nights I cried silently in the bathroom after Stephanie went to bed. But what choice did I have? She needed stability, and I was determined to give her everything, even when it meant sacrificing my own needs. Stephanie was a brilliant student. When she got accepted to Northwestern University with a partial scholarship, I still needed to cover thousands in tuition and expenses. I refinanced our home, took on extra hours, and somehow we made it work. Watching her walk across that stage to receive her diploma made every sacrifice worthwhile. I did this for us, Mom, she whispered when she hugged me after the ceremony. One day I'll pay you back for everything. After college, Stephanie landed a marketing job in Chicago. Our Sunday phone calls were sacred. No matter how busy she became, she always made time for our long conversations about everything and nothing. When she was promoted to senior marketing manager at 30, I drove 5 hours to surprise her with her favorite childhood meal in her new apartment. Then Ryan entered the picture 3 years ago. He was charming, successful, and clearly smitten with my daughter. Their relationship moved quickly. During their first Christmas together, I noticed small changes in Stephanie. She checked her phone constantly when Ryan texted, sometimes abruptly ending our conversations to respond to him. He just misses me, she explained with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. When they visited for Thanksgiving the following year, I observed how Ryan subtly corrected Stephanie's stories, completing her sentences or contradicting minor details. Actually, honey, it was Tuesday, not Wednesday, he'd say, or, that's not exactly how it happened. Each time Stephanie would pause, then defer to his version of events. By the end of the weekend, she spoke less and less. Still, when they announced their engagement at Christmas dinner, I was genuinely happy for them. Stephanie's eyes sparkled as she extended her hand to show off the diamond ring. It's beautiful, sweetheart, I said, hugging her tightly. We're thinking of a Paris wedding, Ryan mentioned casually. Stephanie has always wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. That was the first I'd heard of this dream. In all our years of mother-daughter talks, Paris had never come up. But perhaps I'd forgotten, or perhaps it was a new dream born from her relationship with Ryan. That sounds wonderful, I said sincerely. I've never been overseas myself, but I'd love to help however I can. Later that night, when Ryan was occupied with football on TV, Stephanie and I sat at the kitchen table like old times. She showed me Pinterest boards of Parisian venues and flowing white gowns. Mom, this is going to be expensive, she admitted, biting her lip. Ryan's parents are contributing, but we're still short. Without hesitation, I offered $30,000. It represented most of my retirement savings, but seeing her happiness made it seem worthwhile. Are you sure? Tears welled in her eyes. That's too much. I've been saving for something special, I assured her. What could be more special than your wedding day? We spent hours that night planning together. We researched flights to Paris, discussed potential dates, and even practiced pronouncing French words, dissolving into laughter at my terrible accent. For the first time in months, I felt like I had my daughter back. We'll go dress shopping next month, she promised, squeezing my hand. Just us girls. As I fell asleep that night, I felt nothing but hope. My daughter was getting married in Paris, and I would be there to see it. I even allowed myself to imagine standing in her hotel room, helping her into her wedding dress, perhaps sharing wisdom about marriage and life as my own mother had done for me. The next morning, I transferred the $30,000 from my retirement account to Stephanie's bank account. For the Paris wedding, I wrote in the memo line along with a heart symbol. It was the largest single transaction I'd ever made, but also the easiest. My daughter's happiness was worth every penny. The first signs that something was wrong came about 2 weeks after my financial contribution. I called Stephanie to ask about scheduling our dress shopping trip. "Oh, Mom, things are so hectic right now," she said, sounding distracted. "Let me check my calendar and get back to you." She never did. When I texted her the following week, her response came almost 24 hours later. "Super busy with work and wedding stuff. Talk soon." February turned to March, and our communication dwindled to brief text exchanges. I noticed Stephanie had started posting wedding updates on Facebook that she hadn't shared with me. There were photos of her and Ryan's mother, Caroline, touring what appeared to be reception venues. One evening, I saw a post that made my stomach drop. Said yes to the dress today. Thanks for your help, Caroline. Accompanied by a photo of Stephanie hugging Ryan's mother outside a bridal boutique. I called immediately, trying to keep disappointment from my voice. "Oh, Mom, I'm sorry." Stephanie sounded genuinely apologetic. It was completely spontaneous. Caroline was in town for a charity event, and we just happened to pass this boutique. "I thought we had plans to shop together," I said quietly. "We did, but you know how crazy wedding planning is. Nothing goes according to schedule," she laughed lightly. "Besides, you'll see the dress at the wedding." That night, I cried for the first time since Frank died. It wasn't just about the dress. It was the casual dismissal of our plans, the ease with which I had been replaced. The pattern continued. Stephanie stopped answering my calls consistently. Updates about the wedding came through social media rather than directly from her. When I did manage to reach her, our conversations were rushed, with Ryan often audible in the background. "Hey babe, we're going to be late," he'd call out, and Stephanie would immediately wrap up our call. In April, I received a group text that the wedding venue had changed. No longer the intimate chateau Stephanie and I had admired during our planning session, but a grand hotel with a view of the Eiffel Tower. When I called to ask about it, Stephanie seemed annoyed by my questions. "Ryan's parents thought the chateau was too small for our guest list," she explained curtly. "This makes more sense financially." "Has the guest list grown?" I asked, confused. "I thought you wanted something intimate." "Mom, please don't make this difficult. Everything's under control." The following week, I was invited to dinner at Ryan's parents' home. It was an uncomfortable evening from the start. Caroline, a perfectly coiffed woman with a permanent smile, dominated the conversation with wedding details. She referred to our wedding planner and our florist as if the event belonged to her. "Eleanor, we've chosen the most divine menu," Caroline gushed. "French cuisine, of course, but with some American touches for less sophisticated palates." I felt her eyes on me as she said this. Ryan's father, Harold, a stern businessman, mainly discussed costs. "This Paris venue is running us a fortune," he complained, swirling his expensive scotch. "But only the best for our son's wedding." When I mentioned my contribution, an awkward silence fell over the table. "Mom," Stephanie said sharply, "that's not appropriate dinner conversation." Later, in the kitchen while helping with dessert, I asked Stephanie directly about the money. "Has my contribution been helpful with the expenses?" I kept my voice casual. "Of course," she replied, not meeting my eyes. "We've put it toward the venue deposit." Something in her tone made me suspicious. The deposit must be substantial for such a grand hotel. Ryan and I have it handled, she said dismissively. Let's not talk numbers tonight, okay? That night I couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong. The next morning, I called my bank to confirm the money had been properly transferred. It had cleared weeks ago. I then did something I'm not proud of. I checked Stephanie's social media more thoroughly. There were recent posts about a weekend trip to the Hamptons with Ryan, shopping sprees in Manhattan, and a new luxury watch she bought for Ryan as an early wedding gift. These expenses seemed extravagant for someone supposedly saving for a Paris wedding. When I finally reached Stephanie by phone, I tried to approach the subject gently. Sweetheart, I noticed you've been traveling a lot lately. Is everything on track with the wedding budget? Are you monitoring my spending? She asked incredulously. Mom, that's crossing a line. I'm just concerned. $30,000 is a significant amount of money. If you were going to attach strings to your gift, you should have said so, she snapped. Ryan was right. You always try to control everything. Ryan said that about me? I felt a cold weight in my chest. Look, Mom, I need to go. We can talk about this another time. She hung up before I could respond. It was our first real argument since she was a teenager. That evening, my friend Marge came over with wine and sympathy. We've been friends since our children were in elementary school together, and she knows Stephanie almost as well as I do. Something's not right, Ellie, she said as I recounted the conversation. This doesn't sound like the Stephanie I know. She's different since Ryan, I admitted. Sometimes I barely recognize her. Have you considered not going to the wedding? Marge asked carefully. Not go? Of course I'm going. I'm her mother. I'm just saying if they're treating you this way now, how will they treat you in Paris? I dismissed Marge's concerns that night, but her words haunted me. For the first time, I began to wonder if my presence at the wedding was truly wanted. May arrived, and with it, my 67th birthday. Frank and I had always made birthdays special in our family, a tradition I continued after his death. Stephanie never forgot my birthday, not once in 30 years. Even during her college finals, she'd managed to send flowers and call. This year, my phone remained silent. No card arrived. No flowers. No phone call. I told myself she was busy with wedding preparations, that it was a simple oversight. When evening came with still no acknowledgement, I finally texted her. Just checking in. Hope all is well with wedding planning. 3 hours later, she responded. All good. Super busy. Talk soon. Nothing about my birthday. It was as if the date had lost all significance. I went to bed early that night, feeling invisible in my daughter's life. The following weekend, Ryan's parents hosted an engagement party at their country club. I wore my best dress, had my hair done professionally, and arrived with a carefully chosen gift. The party was lavish, with champagne flowing and a string quartet playing in the corner. I recognized few faces among the 100 or so guests. I spotted Stephanie across the room, radiant in a designer dress I'd never seen. When she finally made her way to me, her greeting was warm but rushed. Mom, you look nice, she said, kissing my cheek. Have you met everyone? Before I could answer, Ryan appeared, placing a possessive hand on Stephanie's waist. Eleanor, he nodded. There was no warmth in his voice. Caroline was looking for you. Something about your seating arrangement. As I moved away, I heard him whisper to Stephanie. Why is she wearing that? It looks like something from a thrift store. My daughter didn't defend me. She laughed softly and whispered something back that made Ryan smirk. Caroline had not, in fact, been looking for me. I spent most of the evening alone at a table near the kitchen, watching my daughter circulate among strangers who seemed to know more about her wedding than I did. When the speeches began, Harold raised his glass. To Ryan and Stephanie, and our two families joining together. Caroline and I couldn't be prouder to welcome Stephanie into our family, and to host what will be the wedding of the year in Paris this September. September. The wedding had been scheduled for November. No one had told me the date had changed. After the party, I waited in the parking lot to speak with Stephanie alone. When she and Ryan finally emerged, I approached them. Stephanie, could we talk for a moment? About the wedding date. Ryan sighed loudly. We have a brunch reservation, Eleanor. Can this wait? It will just take a minute, I insisted, trying to maintain my composure. Stephanie glanced at Ryan, then nodded. Go start the car. I'll be right there. When we were alone, I asked, the wedding is in September now. When did this change? She had the grace to look embarrassed. We moved it up because of the hotel's availability. I thought I mentioned it. You didn't, I said softly. I need to change my flight and hotel reservations. Stephanie bit her lip. About that, Mom. The thing is, the wedding is going to be very intimate now. Just 50 guests. I understand, I said, though I didn't. I'll still need to change my reservations. She looked at the ground, then back at me. We're really limiting the guest list to close friends and immediate family. The implication hung in the air between us. I was her mother. How much more immediate could family be? Stephanie, are you saying I'm not invited to your wedding? No, she backpedaled quickly. Of course you're invited. It's just complicated. Ryan's family has certain expectations, and they're covering most of the costs now. I contributed $30,000, I reminded her. And we're so grateful, she said quickly. Look, I need to go. Ryan's waiting. We'll figure everything out, I promise. But nothing was figured out. June arrived and communication became even more sparse. I saw Facebook posts of Stephanie at a bridal shower I hadn't been invited to. There were photos of wedding favors being assembled by Caroline and her friends. Not once was I included. Determined to be at my daughter's wedding regardless, I booked a flight to Paris for September and reserved a modest hotel room near the wedding venue. I didn't tell Stephanie, hoping things would improve before then. Then came the email that broke my heart. It arrived on a Tuesday evening as I was preparing for bed. The subject line read simply, Wedding Update. With trembling hands, I opened it. Mom, I've been trying to find the right words to say this. After a lot of discussion with Ryan and his parents, we've decided to keep the wedding extremely small. The venue has strict capacity limits, and we've had to make some difficult decisions about the guest list. Given our strained relationship lately, it might be best if you don't attend in person. If you want to be a part of it, you can watch through the Google Earth window, LOL. We might be able to set up a live stream too. I hope you understand. Love, Stephanie. I read it once, twice, 3 times. Each reading brought fresh pain. The casual cruelty of suggesting I watch my only daughter's wedding through Google Earth was breathtaking. The dismissive LOL like it was some kind of joke. And the signature Love, Stephanie, after such a heartless message, seemed the cruelest touch of all. My chest tightened painfully. For a moment I feared I was having a heart attack like Frank. I sat down heavily on my bed, trying to breathe through the shock and hurt. When the physical symptoms subsided, the emotional pain remained, sharp and unrelenting. Tears came not in a dramatic flood, but in a steady stream that seemed it might never end. I hadn't cried like this since Frank died. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually I reached for my phone and called Marge. It was after midnight, but she answered on the second ring. Ellie? What's wrong? Through broken sobs, I explained about the email. Marge's outrage on my behalf was immediate. This is unacceptable, she declared. That's not Stephanie talking. It's Ryan and his horrible parents. But she wrote it, I whispered. My own daughter. Have you spoken to any of her friends? Alice? What about Jennifer from college? They might know what's going on. The next day, feeling numb, I reached out to Alice, Stephanie's childhood friend. Her response was illuminating and devastating. Mrs. Thompson, I've been wanting to call you, Alice said. Something strange is going on with Steph. She told everyone you couldn't make it to the wedding because of health problems. I was so worried about you. Health problems. My daughter was lying to her friends about why I wouldn't be at her wedding. Through careful conversations with Alice and other friends, I learned more painful truths. Ryan's entire extended family was invited, including distant cousins he barely knew. College friends Stephanie hadn't seen in years had received elegant invitations. Even neighbors from Ryan's parents' community had made the guest list. Everyone except me, her mother. The stress took its toll. I lost 7 pounds in 2 weeks. Sleep became elusive. My nights spent staring at the ceiling, replaying memories of Stephanie's childhood, wondering where I had gone wrong. My sister Jane urged me to confront Stephanie directly. Call her right now and demand an explanation, she insisted. But something held me back. A lifetime of putting Stephanie first had created a pattern I couldn't easily break. Instead, I endured the sleepless nights and wondered what to do next. The first 24 hours after receiving Stephanie's email were a blur of shock and disbelief. I moved through my home like a ghost, touching photographs of my daughter that lined the walls. Here was Stephanie at 5, missing her front teeth and beaming proudly. There she was at 16, posing beside the used car I'd saved for years to buy her. On my bedside table, a framed photo of her college graduation, her arms around me as we both smiled into the camera. Had those moments meant nothing to her? As shock gave way to grief, memories surfaced with painful clarity. I remembered the winter Stephanie had pneumonia at age 9, how I'd slept on her bedroom floor for 5 nights, waking hourly to check her temperature and adjust cool compresses. I recalled working double shifts for months to afford the computer she needed for high school. There were countless meals prepared, clothes washed, homework supervised, tears dried. Most painfully, I remembered her high school graduation speech as class valedictorian. "I stand here today because of one person," she had said, her voice clear and confident. "My mom, who showed me that with enough love and determination, any obstacle can be overcome. Mom, you worked 2 jobs to give me opportunities you never had. You never complained, never faltered. Everything I am, everything I will become, is because of your sacrifice and love." The audience had given me a standing ovation that day. Strangers had approached to congratulate me on raising such an exceptional young woman. The memory now felt like a cruel joke. On the second day after the email, I found myself opening Stephanie's wedding registry online. The items listed were shockingly extravagant. Crystal stemware costing hundreds per glass, an espresso machine priced at nearly $2,000, silver serving pieces from Tiffany. These were not the choices of the practical, thoughtful daughter I had raised. I calculated what my $30,000 contribution represented in real terms. It was 5 years of careful saving. It was delaying roof repairs on my aging home. It was foregoing dental work I needed but couldn't afford. It was working past retirement age to secure my future. All sacrifice for a wedding I was now forbidden to attend. That afternoon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. It was Caroline, Ryan's mother. "Eleanor, darling." Her voice dripped with false warmth. "I'm finalizing seating arrangements for the rehearsal dinner in Paris. I wanted to check if you have any dietary restrictions." For a moment I couldn't speak. Did she not know I'd been uninvited? "Caroline," I finally managed, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Stephanie sent an email saying I shouldn't attend the wedding." A pause. "Oh, well, that's news to me. Though to be honest, Stephanie did mention you two were having some difficulties. Perhaps she thought it would be uncomfortable for you." The condescension in her tone was unmistakable. She knew. She had probably helped draft the email herself. "Thank you for calling, Caroline," I said with as much dignity as I could muster. "I won't be attending the rehearsal dinner or the wedding." After hanging up, I found myself walking to Stephanie's childhood bedroom, preserved largely as she had left it for college. I sat on her bed, running my hands over the quilt I had sewn for her 16th birthday. The bookshelf still held her favorite novels, the closet a few old dresses she hadn't taken to her apartment. On an impulse, I pulled out the box of her high school keepsakes from under the bed. Inside were yearbooks, dried corsages from dances, and a stack of notebooks. One caught my eye, a journal with Mom's wisdom written on the cover. Inside, in Stephanie's teenage handwriting, were copies of all the lunch notes I had written her over the years. Each was carefully dated, some accompanied by Stephanie's own reflections. Mom's note today said, "Kindness costs nothing but means everything. After Jessica was mean to me at lunch, I shared my cookies with her anyway. It helped." Mom wrote, "True strength isn't about never falling, it's about rising every time we fall. Bombed my math test but going to ask for extra credit. Not giving up." Page after page of these small moments preserved with such care. This was the daughter I knew. The one who valued kindness and perseverance. The one who had somehow disappeared. Behind the journal was a letter Stephanie had written but apparently never given me. Dated just after her college graduation, it read, "Dear Mom, There aren't enough words to thank you for everything you've sacrificed for me. While other parents gave their children material things, you gave me something far more valuable. Your unwavering love and support. You showed me what true strength looks like. You taught me to stand on my own, to face challenges with grace, and to never, ever give up on what matters. I promise to make you proud. I promise to live by the values you instilled in me. And someday, I hope to be half the mother you have been to me. All my love. Stephanie. The letter slipped from my trembling fingers. Tears flowed freely now, not just for what I had lost, but for what Stephanie had lost of herself. The young woman who wrote this heartfelt letter would never have sent that cruel email. Something had changed her fundamentally. And that realization brought a strange clarity. This wasn't just about a wedding invitation. This was about reclaiming my self-respect, and perhaps helping my daughter find her way back to herself. Sitting in that room surrounded by memories, I made a decision. I would not beg for an invitation to a wedding where I wasn't wanted. I would not subject myself to further humiliation at the hands of Ryan and his family. Most importantly, I would not continue to finance an event that had become a symbol of disrespect and ingratitude. With a newfound sense of purpose, I composed my brief reply to Stephanie's email. Sure. Enjoy your big day. The moment I sent those 5 words, an unexpected peace washed over me. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking. Morning sunlight streamed through my bedroom window as I woke feeling surprisingly rested. The devastation of the previous days had given way to quiet determination. I knew exactly what I needed to do. My first call was to my bank. I spoke with Jerome, the manager who had handled my accounts since Frank died. Jerome, I need to discuss reversing a funds transfer. I explained calmly. Mrs. Thompson, that depends on several factors, he replied. How long ago was the transfer made? And what were the circumstances? I explained about the wedding contribution and Stephanie's subsequent uninvitation. Jerome's professional tone softened with sympathy. Let me look into this, he said. Since the funds were clearly designated for a specific purpose that's no longer valid, we may have options. Can you come in this afternoon? Next, I called Howard Daniels, a lawyer friend of Frank's who had helped with his estate. Howard listened patiently to my situation. Eleanor, you have legal grounds here, he assured me. This was not a gift but a conditional contribution for a specific event you were expected to attend. I'll draft a letter immediately. By noon, I sat in Howard's office reviewing the legal document he had prepared. It was firm but not unkind, explaining that the $30,000 had been provided specifically to fund a wedding I would be attending as mother of the bride. As this condition had been breached, the funds should be returned within 7 business days. Is this really necessary? I asked, suddenly uncertain. She's still my daughter. Howard leaned forward, his expression serious. Eleanor, this isn't just about money. It's about establishing boundaries. From what you've told me, Stephanie needs to understand her actions have consequences. I signed the letter, and Howard promised to have it delivered by courier that afternoon. With that task complete, I made one more stop, at a travel agency downtown. Margaret, the travel agent, greeted me warmly. Eleanor, are you here about your Paris booking? Actually, I'm here to cancel it, I replied. And I'd like to book something else instead. An hour later, I left with confirmation of a 10-day trip to Hawaii, departing 2 days before Stephanie's wedding. The package included beachfront accommodations, a sunset cruise, and several island tours. It cost exactly 1/5 of my reclaimed wedding contribution. The rest of the money would go toward long-deferred home repairs, dental work I'd been postponing, and a comfortable cushion in my savings account. For the first time in years, I was choosing myself. That evening, I sat down to write Stephanie a letter. Not an angry diatribe, but a calm expression of my feelings and boundaries. I wanted it to be something she might reflect on years later and recognize as coming from a place of love, not spite. My dearest Stephanie, I began. By now you've received the legal letter requesting the return of the wedding funds. I want you to understand why. When I contributed to your wedding, it was with the understanding that I would be present as your mother to share in your joy. It was not just financial support, but an expression of my love and desire to be part of your special day. Your decision to exclude me from this event has caused me pain I cannot adequately express. The casual manner of your email, suggesting I watch through Google Earth, felt dismissive of our relationship and my role in your life. I've spent decades putting your needs before my own. I worked extra jobs to provide opportunities for you. I postponed my own dreams to fulfill yours. I did this gladly, without resentment, because that's what mothers do for their children. But I've realized that love without respect is incomplete. By allowing myself to be excluded, overlooked, and taken for granted, I haven't been modeling the self-respect I always tried to teach you. The money will be returned to me, and I've canceled my Paris reservations. Instead, I'll be in Hawaii during your wedding week, giving myself the care and consideration I deserve. This doesn't mean I love you less. In fact, it's because I love you that I can no longer enable behavior that diminishes both of us. When you're ready to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect, I'll be here. Always with love. Mom. I sealed the letter and placed it on the hall table to mail in the morning. That night, I began a ritual that would sustain me through the coming weeks. I lit a candle, brewed a cup of tea, and wrote in a journal about my feelings and reflections. No more stuffing emotions down or pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. The next morning brought the first call from Stephanie. By 9 a.m., there were 3 missed calls and a text. Mom, call me ASAP. I silenced my phone and continued with my day, scheduling the roof repairs I'd been postponing and making an appointment with my dentist. By evening, there were 10 missed calls and 5 increasingly urgent texts. I turned off my phone entirely and continued with my self-care routine, preparing a proper dinner for myself and enjoying it at my dining table with a glass of wine rather than eating hurriedly over the kitchen sink as had become my habit. The following day, I visited my bank again. The process to reclaim the funds was underway, with Jerome assuring me it looked promising given the circumstances. While there, I opened a separate account specifically for the returned wedding money, making it easier to track and allocate responsibly. You seem different, Eleanor, Jerome observed. More confident. I'm learning to value myself, I replied, surprised at how true those words felt. That afternoon, I created something I should have made years ago. A detailed accounting of everything I had spent on Stephanie since her 18th birthday. College tuition beyond her scholarship. The down payment assistance for her first apartment. The car repairs, medical bills, and countless smaller expenses I had covered without question or expectation of repayment. The total was staggering, well into 6 figures. I didn't create this document to demand repayment, but to remind myself of my own generosity, and to counter the narrative that I had somehow failed as a mother. By the 5th day after sending my response, my voicemail was full, and emails from both Stephanie and Ryan had accumulated unread. I maintained my silence, focusing instead on transforming my home into a space that reflected my own tastes and preferences. For years, I had kept everything exactly as it was when Stephanie lived here, preserving her childhood in amber. Now I donated her old toys to charity, repainted her bedroom in soothing sea colors, and ordered a comfortable reading chair to create a sanctuary for myself. The nursery school where I volunteered noticed the change in me as well. You're glowing, Eleanor, my friend Diane commented during our volunteer shift. What's your secret? Impulsively, I shared my story. To my surprise, Diane revealed she had experienced something similar with her son years earlier. It nearly broke me, she admitted. But setting boundaries saved both of us in the end. That conversation sparked an idea. The following week, I started a support group at our community center for parents experiencing estrangement or difficult relationships with adult children. 6 people attended the first meeting. By the 3rd week, the group had grown to 15. Leading these sessions gave purpose to my pain. Each shared story reminded me I wasn't alone, and each small breakthrough celebrated by a group member gave me hope for my own situation. As Stephanie's wedding date approached, I finalized my Hawaii itinerary, choosing activities that would keep me fully engaged during what I knew would be an emotionally challenging time. I scheduled a massage for the exact hours of her ceremony and a sunset sail for the reception time. The day before my departure, I turned off my phone completely, planning to leave it at home during my trip. This would be a complete break, a reset, a declaration of independence. As I packed my suitcase with new summer clothes purchased specifically for this journey, I felt lighter than I had in months. Whatever happened with Stephanie in the future, I had reclaimed my self-respect. That alone was worth more than any wedding invitation. Hawaii was everything I had hoped for and more. The gentle rhythm of island life, the breathtaking sunsets, and the kindness of strangers combined to create a healing experience I hadn't known I needed. Each morning, I walked along the beach as the sun rose, feeling the warm sand between my toes and listening to the soothing sound of waves breaking on the shore. On what would have been Stephanie's wedding day, I scheduled a full day of activities. A morning snorkeling excursion introduced me to the vibrant underwater world of tropical fish and coral reefs. An afternoon cultural tour taught me about Hawaiian history and traditions. The evening massage left me relaxed and at peace. Not once did I check my email or phone messages. This time was for me alone. The 10 days passed too quickly. As my flight touched down at home, I felt renewed, my perspective fundamentally shifted. The woman who boarded the plane to Hawaii had been defined by her role as a mother. The woman who returned recognized herself as a complete person with her own needs, desires, and boundaries. My neighbor Alice had collected my mail during my absence. The stack was substantial, including several handwritten envelopes I recognized as Stephanie's handwriting. I placed them in a drawer, not yet ready to read them. After unpacking and settling in, I finally turned on my phone. It immediately began buzzing with notifications. 37 missed calls, 22 voicemails, 48 text messages. Most from Stephanie, some from Ryan, a few from numbers I didn't recognize. I decided to listen to the voicemails chronologically, starting from the first day after I'd sent my response. Stephanie's initial messages were angry and defensive. "Mom, what the hell? You can't just take back a wedding gift. Call me immediately." The next few followed a similar pattern, with increasing urgency. "The venue is threatening to cancel without full payment. You're ruining everything." By the fifth message, her tone had changed completely. "Mom, please," she was crying now. "I'm sorry about the email. It was Ryan who suggested those words, not me. Please call me back." The most recent voicemail, left just yesterday, broke my heart anew. "Mom." Stephanie's voice was small, almost childlike. "The wedding is over. It wasn't what I thought it would be. I miss you. I need my mom. Please call me when you get this." I sat quietly for a long time, processing these messages and what they revealed. It seemed my absence had been felt more profoundly than my presence ever had been. Finally, I texted Stephanie a simple message. "I'm home now. We can talk tomorrow if you'd like." Her response was immediate. "Can I come over? Please." We arranged for her to visit the following afternoon. I spent the morning preparing mentally and emotionally for this conversation. I wanted to be open to reconciliation without abandoning the boundaries I had established. At precisely 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, I barely recognized my daughter. The confident, polished young woman I had last seen at Ryan's parents' engagement party was gone. In her place stood someone with shadowed eyes and slumped shoulders, looking far older than her 33 years. "Mom," she whispered, and then she was in my arms, sobbing against my shoulder like she hadn't done since childhood. I guided her to the living room and made tea, giving us both time to compose ourselves. When we finally sat down to talk, Stephanie couldn't meet my eyes. "I don't know where to begin," she said, staring into her teacup. "Start anywhere," I suggested gently. "I'm listening." The story emerged in broken fragments. How Ryan had gradually isolated her from friends and family. How his parents had taken over wedding planning, insisting on a guest list filled with their social connections. How the $30,000 I had contributed had indeed been spent, but not on the wedding venue as claimed. Ryan used it for the down payment on a boat, she admitted, shame coloring her cheeks. He said since his parents were covering the wedding costs, we deserved something for ourselves. When my letter demanding return of the funds arrived, panic ensued. The venue required final payment, and Ryan's parents, furious about the boat purchase, refused to cover the shortfall. Their solution was to cut the guest list further, starting with me. "I should have stood up to them," Stephanie said, tears flowing again. "I should have canceled everything rather than exclude you. I was a coward." The wedding itself had been a hollow affair. Surrounded by Ryan's family and their social circle, Stephanie had felt like a prop in someone else's production. During the ceremony, she had looked for my face in the crowd, the habit of a lifetime, only to remember I wasn't there because of her own actions. After the reception, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried for hours, she confessed. Ryan was furious. He said I was embarrassing him in front of everyone. They had fought bitterly that night and throughout their shortened honeymoon. Upon returning to the States, Stephanie had moved into a hotel rather than the new condo they had rented. I don't think our marriage is going to survive, she said quietly. And I don't know if I want it to. Throughout her story, I remained silent, listening without judgment. When she finally finished, the question I had been holding for months slipped out. Why, Stephanie? Why did you allow them to treat me this way? After everything we've been through together? She had no adequate answer, only remorse and regret. I got lost, Mom. Somewhere between falling in love with Ryan and becoming part of his world, I lost myself. I became someone I don't recognize or like very much. I recognized the truth in her words. The daughter I had raised was still there, buried beneath layers of influence and misplaced priorities. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she continued. I don't deserve it. I just want you to know how sorry I am, and that I understand if our relationship can't be repaired. In that moment, I faced a choice. I could hold on to my hurt and anger, keeping Stephanie at arm's length as punishment for her actions. Or I could open the door to healing, without sacrificing the boundaries I had established. Forgiveness isn't something you earn, Stephanie, I said finally. It's something I give for my own peace as much as yours. But rebuilding trust will take time and consistent effort from both of us. We talked for hours, setting ground rules for moving forward. Stephanie would repay the wedding money in monthly installments, not because I needed it financially, but because taking responsibility for her actions was an important step in her growth. We would attend counseling together to address the patterns that had led to our estrangement. And most importantly, we would communicate openly and honestly, even when the truth was difficult. As evening approached, Stephanie asked hesitantly, "Can I see your Hawaii photos?" We sat side by side looking through my vacation pictures, Stephanie genuinely delighted by the image of her usually cautious mother attempting to surf, parasailing over crystal waters, and dancing at a traditional luau. "You look so happy," she observed. "So free." "I am different," I acknowledged. "I've learned that loving you doesn't mean erasing myself." When Stephanie left that evening, our relationship was far from healed, but the process had begun. I watched her drive away feeling cautiously hopeful, but also secure in the knowledge that whatever happened next, I would be okay. The weeks that followed brought more difficult conversations. Ryan refused to accept responsibility for his role in our estrangement, instead blaming Stephanie for overreacting and choosing her mother over her marriage. His attempts to manipulate her became increasingly desperate as she established her own boundaries. 2 months after our reunion, Stephanie moved into her own apartment and filed for separation. It wasn't a decision she made lightly, but it was one she made with clarity and conviction. "He's not a bad person," she explained during one of our weekly dinners, "but we want very different things." I lost sight of my own values trying to become who he wanted me to be. As summer turned to fall, our relationship continued to strengthen, built on a new foundation of mutual respect rather than dependence. The monthly checks Stephanie sent were accompanied by handwritten notes expressing gratitude, not just for my financial support over the years, but for the life lessons I had modeled. In counseling, we addressed painful truths that had long gone unspoken. I acknowledged my own role in creating an unbalanced relationship, one where my identity had become too wrapped up in being Stephanie's mother. She confronted the selfishness that had allowed her to take my support for granted. Slowly, a healthier mother-daughter relationship emerged from the ashes of the old one. We were no longer just mother and daughter, but two women who chose to be in each other's lives, who valued and respected one another as individuals. 1 year to the day after Stephanie's Paris wedding, we sat together on the balcony of a small cafe near the Eiffel Tower, sipping espresso and watching tourists stream by below. "I still can't believe we're here together," Stephanie said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Our Paris trip had been her idea, a way to replace painful memories with new ones. Using her graphic design skills, she had taken on freelance projects for months to save for this mother-daughter journey. "Thank you for giving me another chance," she added softly. "Not everyone would have." I smiled, thinking of how far we had both come. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending the hurt never happened. It means choosing to release the hold that hurt has on us. The year had brought profound changes for both of us. Stephanie's divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier. Though financially challenging, it had freed her to rediscover her own identity and values. She had reconnected with old friends, resumed volunteering at the animal shelter she once loved, and recently been promoted at the marketing firm where she now worked. For my part, I had continued leading the parent support group, which had grown to include 30 members from across the county. The healing I found in helping others navigate their own painful relationships had been unexpected but profound. My home renovation was complete, reflecting my own tastes rather than preserved memories. I had even started dating again, enjoying the company of Harold, a kind widower I met through my community garden project. "You know what I realized recently?" Stephanie said, gazing at the iconic tower that had once symbolized such a different occasion. "All those years you taught me about kindness, honesty, and standing up for what's right. But the most important lesson came when you finally stood up to me." I tilted my head, curious. "When you refused to accept being discarded, when you valued yourself enough to set boundaries, you taught me more about dignity and self-respect than all your words ever could," she explained. "You showed me what real strength looks like." Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is say no, I reflected. I spent so many years thinking that good mothers always sacrifice, always say yes, always put their children first. I didn't understand that by never putting myself first, I was teaching you that my needs didn't matter. "And I learned that lesson all too well," Stephanie acknowledged. "I became someone who took without giving back, who expected sacrifice without gratitude." We had discussed this pattern extensively in counseling. How my overcorrection for Frank's absence had created an imbalance. How Stephanie had grown accustomed to being the center of my universe. How that expectation had made her vulnerable to Ryan's similar demands for priority and sacrifice. "Breaking patterns is hard work," I said, finishing my coffee. "For both of us." "Worth it though," Stephanie smiled. Later that afternoon, we visited the Luxembourg Gardens, strolling arm in arm among blooming flowers and elaborate fountains. Neither of us mentioned that this had been Stephanie's originally planned wedding venue, before Ryan's parents insisted on the more prestigious hotel. Some ghosts were best left undisturbed. That evening in my hotel room, I opened my journal to record thoughts about our trip. This practice, begun during my darkest days after Stephanie's wedding email, had become an important part of my self-care routine. Flipping through earlier entries, I was struck by how far I had come from the devastated woman who wondered if she would ever feel whole again. My journey from heartbreak to healing hadn't been linear. There had been setbacks and difficult days, moments when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. Just last month, Stephanie had canceled our weekly dinner at the last minute for work obligations, triggering my old fears of being low on her priority list. Instead of silently accepting it, I had expressed my disappointment while respecting her professional commitments. She had responded by rescheduling immediately and bringing flowers when we next met. Small moments but significant ones. Evidence of new patterns forming. My support group members often asked what advice I would give others facing similar situations. The answer was never simple, but it always centered on one truth. Love without respect diminishes both the giver and receiver. For decades, I had confused unconditional love with unending accommodation. I had believed that good mothers erased their own needs in service to their children's happiness. In trying to be everything for Stephanie, I had inadvertently taught her that I was nothing in my own right. The painful email about her wedding had been the breaking point, but the cracks had formed years earlier, hairline fractures in a foundation built on imbalance. Had I addressed those cracks sooner, perhaps the collapse might have been avoided. But there was no value in such speculations now. What mattered was that from the rubble, we had built something new and stronger. A relationship between equals, bound by love but anchored in mutual respect. As I prepared for bed that night, my phone chimed with a text from Stephanie. "Thank you for today, Mom. For Paris, but more importantly, for showing me what healing looks like. I love you. I smiled as I typed my response. The journey continues, one day at a time. I love you too. The next morning, our last in Paris, we visited the Pont des Arts. Though the famous love locks had been removed years earlier, the bridge still symbolized commitment and connection. I have something for you, Stephanie said, reaching into her purse. She withdrew a small wrapped package. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with 2 interlocking circles. Engraved on the inside were the words, "Without beginning, without end, continually made new." It's beautiful, I said, genuinely touched. The circles represent us, she explained. Independent but connected. And the engraving reminds us that relationships aren't static. They evolve, they break, they heal, they transform. As she fastened it around my wrist, I thought about the countless mothers and daughters throughout time who had navigated their own complex dances of connection and separation, love and boundaries, sacrifice and self-preservation. Each pair writing their own story, making their own mistakes, finding their own way back to each other. Our story wasn't perfect. It contained chapters of hurt and betrayal alongside moments of profound love and connection. But it was authentically ours, and its ending remained unwritten. Standing there on that bridge, watching boats glide along the Seine below, I felt gratitude wash over me. Not just for the reconciliation with my daughter, but for the difficult journey that had led me back to myself. Sometimes the most profound love we can offer is the courage to stand firm when it would be easier to bend. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is the example of valuing ourselves. And sometimes when an email tells you not to come to a wedding but to watch through Google Earth instead, the wisest response is simply, "Sure. Enjoy your big day." And then to book yourself a ticket to Hawaii. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you love? What helped you find the strength to stand firm? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more tales of resilience and self-discovery. Remember, it's never too late to reclaim your self-worth. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to honor yourself, even when it's the hardest choice to make.